Okay, everybody, while you're still settling in, while you're finding your forks, salad fork, proper fork, I want to remind you that unlike a lot of speaker sessions, we ask that you keep your smartphones handy during the entire thing. We want to see some good tweets using the Ed Sessions hashtag. And right now, before I introduce our speaker, I know everybody's still settling. I appreciate that. Here's what we want to do, an informal text poll. We want everyone to take a part of it if you can. So pull out the smartphones, keep them out. Put them on vibrate if you got it. If a call comes in, it needs to be really important to take it, okay? But here's 2 questions we want to have you guys answer via text poll. And the first question is, do you have a brand? This applies directly to our speaker today, so think about this. Here's how it's going to work. You text your response to the number 22333. That's who you're texting. And you insert the number that represents your answer into the message. I'll let you guys go ahead with that for a little bit. I like that I'm not hearing so many forks and I'm seeing lots of hands on keys. That's good. Virtual keys even. Mark, are we getting good answers? Are you seeing any? Okay, while you're still working on that one, I got another one for you. This is a little more subjective, so it's risky. But here's the second question. If you have a brand, what is it? And this is going to be a little trickier to answer. So what I need you to do, you're still sending your responses to the number 22333, but this time insert this number before your answer. The number is 481352, and I'll repeat that like 7 times. So you're texting your answer of if you have a brand, what is it? And you're texting your response to 22333. And the number you insert before your answer is 481352. Again, 481352. So my answer to this, I text 481352 Ed Sessions to the number 22333. Over my head, that's my favorite answer so far. Love your education, dedicated. These are good answers. Sage, okay, who's that? My style of being, good. Idaho Voices for Children, well, you'll hear more about that in just a moment. Idaho Leads, good. I know you're here. I know you're here, Lisa. We all have brands. I'm trying to find mine. Good, okay, great. I'm not alone. Keep rolling. In about another minute or two, we're going to get to the introductions here. Community leadership, good. Flexibility. Now, that's kind of the word of the day for me up here. Okay. Well, everybody, I'm going to welcome you to this Ed Sessions event that is, I got to say, unlike any other Ed Sessions we've ever had before. And as you each know, you should know who I am. I'm Shay Anderson. I'm not Kim Fields. I'm not from KTVB. I'm from Ritter Public Relations, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for roping me into this. Asking me to come speak. And as you know, each month, each Ed Sessions features a different educator-related nonprofit that illustrates the Albertson Foundation vision of limitless learning for all Idahoans. So this month, we're highlighting Idaho Voices for Children. Thank you. Yeah, you can clap. It's totally okay to clap for these things. Their mission is to develop and promote a state-level, unified policy agenda that targets children's issues. No small feat. So I hope you'll give me another big round of applause when we welcome Director Leanne Simmons from Idaho Voices for Children.
Thank you, Shay, and thank you to the Ed Sessions and the Albertson Foundation for inviting us here. I appreciate it. Idaho Voices for Children raises awareness, educates, and unites the community to resolve the problems facing Idaho's children in the areas of health, education, safety, and family economic security. Our vision is to create an environment where all children are successful and where they have the opportunity to reach their full potential. We believe that the whole child must be nurtured in order to produce a citizen that is happy and successful as they grow into adulthood. Children's issues transcend party affiliation, and that's why we're a nonpartisan organization. Our experience tells us that elected officials, their appointees, and the state policy employees who work for them care about children, but there are very difficult choices that have to be made. The issues that demand attention encompass every aspect of life, business, and government. Our job is to give lawmakers the best information possible to make the right decisions when it comes to children, today's children and tomorrow's children. Industry doesn't wait for lawmakers to digest the science, the economics, or community interests when it comes to their issues. Our friends in banking, manufacturing, energy, agriculture, really any industry, organize to advocate for their own best interests. You might say that our industry is children, and Idaho Voices for Children is here to provide the ongoing, organized, informed leadership for decisions that affect their future and in turn the future of the state. We're working on two very important issues. Childhood hunger. We want to see the end of childhood hunger in a state that feeds the world. There is no reason for kids to be hungry. But the Idaho Food Bank tells us that 1 in 4 children don't know where their next meal will come from. And then Kids Count report tells us that 65% of our kids are not enrolled in a preschool program. And as you well know, the NAEP tells us that 67% of our kids that are in the 4th grade are not proficient readers. These are all key indicators for success, and we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. I also want to make sure we give notice to some folks who have provided us with the decorations all on your tables. The Idaho Arts Charter School is here from Nampa today, and that art is made by students who are all here with us today. Can we give them a hand? If you can't see the person across your table because you're looking at art, you just consider that lucky. I want to talk about some of the partners that bring this to us today. The Ed Sessions 2.0 is brought to you by the J.A. and Kathryn Albertson Foundation. The foundation is proud to sponsor the Don't Fail Idaho campaign, a statewide public awareness initiative that's designed to inspire an informed and productive conversation about education. You can find out more at don'tfailidaho.org. And the Ed Sessions is brought to you in partnership with the Idaho Association of School Administrators, the Idaho Charter School Network, the Idaho State Board of Education, the Idaho School Boards Association, the Idaho Technology Council, KTVB, and Idaho Businesses for Education, our host partner this month. Thank you, everybody. And these presentations are also videocast live via the edsessions.org, and so I hope you're joining us on the web. Welcome to that audience as well. We don't want this to go unwatched. If you have friends or anyone you know in your school community who can't watch these sessions live with us here today, let them know they can watch the archive video at the website. It usually loads up pretty fast. The guys are pretty good at that. So for our online folks, you can post questions for the speaker later here on the Ed Sessions Facebook page. At any time during this presentation, we'll do our best to hustle them up here to the stage, and I'll try to ask Mark some of these questions that pop up. And feel free to tweet, again, at the hashtag EdSessions, all one word. So how many of you have never been to an Ed Sessions event before? Never been to one of these? Raise your hand. Oh, I like that. Okay, good. So welcome to all of you newbies. For those of you who are familiar with the scene, this is not your usual Ed Sessions. And I don't mean just because I'm standing up here, but because our speaker today is very unique. The Ed Sessions 2.0 theme of this year has been leadership, innovation, and creativity. And I think it's safe to say this month's speaker is a master of all of those, innovation and creativity in particular. And if you haven't opened up his new book, it's rare to walk into a room and get handed a book by the author, signed by the author who's in the room. So thank you for that, Mark. Appreciate that. Pop open that book. On one of the first few pages it looks like higher math, and which scared me at first, but it's Marc Ecko's authenticity formula, and it's something we should all take to heart in our work. Let me give you the rundown on Marc and introduce him for everybody here. Marc Ecko left the safety net of pharmacy school to start his own company. He did a thing that a lot of us dream about. He took a bag of $5,000 worth of cash, literally a bag, read the book, and turned it into a global corporation now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Ecko is an American fashion designer. He's an entrepreneur, an investor, and an artist above all. He is the founder of Marc Ecko Enterprises, a global fashion and lifestyle company. He is also the founder and chairman of Complex Media, the world's leading provider of fashion, entertainment, lifestyle, and product trends to young male tastemakers. Not like me, he has gained international notoriety for various efforts to disrupt the status quo, which is one of the things that makes him exciting to have here today. He's had, some of these involve some successful court battles around graffiti in New York City, a heck of a hoax involving Air Force One. He was also the famous buyer of the Barry Bonds Asterix baseball, which you may have heard about in the last year or so. Ecko serves as an emeritus board member of the Council of Fashion Designers of America, Big Picture Learning, and Tikva Children's Home. He lives in New Jersey with his wife and 3 kids. And like many brilliant and accomplished people before him, when you just turned 40, the thing he did was come to Idaho to speak to you. Thank you very much. Let's all please welcome Marc Ecko.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to take some notes here, just in case I need to write something down. Hello, everybody. Hello. All right. All right, no eating. I kid. You know, can I sit on the stool? Is that all right with you guys? Is this mic work? Can you guys hear me with this? Is that sufficient? All right, I'm going to sit on the stool, if that's cool by you. So it's good to be here. Thank you to Blossom. I want to shout out Blossom because she's been so gracious to me all day since early this morning. To Jamie and the Albertson folks and to the Ed Sessions folks here. So it's good to be here. What the hell does Marc Ecko have to do with education? I think maybe that might be a sentiment among some of you guys. Hopefully you'll see the dots connect in an instance. I thought I'd kind of share some of my backstory. My name is Marc Ecko. My brand is Marc Ecko. That's the brand that people kind of perceive. They've heard about this fashion brand. Started painting T-shirts in my garage as a kid in 8th grade. All throughout those years of high school, those were those kind of 10,000 hours of mastery years that Malcolm talks about. Went on to Rutgers College of Pharmacy, actually. Yeah, that makes sense, from painting graffiti T-shirts to painting this. This hung at the Rutgers College of Pharmacy in the student center for the pharmacy school, Marion Ewing School of Pharmacy. And I did what every great artist who's into pharmacy and drugs does. He drops out of school. I proceeded to drop out in 1993. That was the year that I kind of wanted to formally take that vocation, that love for hustling T-shirts out of my garage, my parents' garage, and to convert that into a business. That's when we formally launched the company. I partnered with my twin sister, Marcy, and my partner, Seth Gertzberg, in '93. And there was my first T-shirt. That very first T-shirt is a picture of a guy smoking grass. I remind myself of that often and frequently, so I don't lose, stay connected to my kind of counterculture roots. I think that first T-shirt sold, millions of units over a 20-year period, and really gave way to a lot of opportunity. In 1994, 95, I launched a video game. Probably one of the few kind of outsiders to kind of try to break into an industry. Gaming, video game publishing, especially for the consoles, is a very difficult business to break in, not only because it's expensive, but just tends to be very incestuous. But I launched a game called Getting Up. It was published by Atari. It was the end of the PlayStation 2 cycle. That was the year that I also tagged the then George Bush, his Air Force One. And you could look that up on YouTube if you're not sure what the hell that is. It's kind of funny. That was a pre-Google acquisition of YouTube, right? So YouTube in 1995 was a much different place, and the whole modality of viral videos was a much different means of communication. You could get away with pulling off a kind of stunt like that today folks are far more cynical, and their default position is almost like, that's not real. So we managed to get away with that very right place, right time. That's been a theme in my story, undoubtedly. In 2003, I launched what was just a magazine at the time called Complex Magazine. Today, Complex Media does, last month we had our first billion page view month. 1 billion page views across 120 different website and media products, focus on video and general media conversations for this young guy. Very proud of how we've organized that business. Really kind of fulfilling my revenge fantasy on big media. Because then that was another example of a guy making sweatshirts coming into a media business. Really proud of the team and the experiences that I've managed to glean from that. So last week, the book came out. And I thought maybe what I'd share with you some of the philosophy in the book. 50,000 feet up. There's no way you're going to be able to get everything out of it. And I'm not going to try to pretend in 30 minutes. But what I was hopeful was to kind of frame some of my thought process and why I ask if you're a brand, and why Shay did that before as kind of a rhetorical question. And as a means of sharing the book. This is the original cover that got rejected. It's like a trademark infringement with those dummies books. But anyways, yeah, so I didn't. So there's a video for the book that I want to share with you, a trailer. I grew up on Schoolhouse Rocks. You guys remember Schoolhouse Rocks? Right? The body grows bigger, the mind gets smaller. Knowledge is power. Schoolhouse Rocks. Chip off the block. I have to go through the whole song. Sorry. Okay, it's done. I heard it. You didn't. That was weird. Anyways, here's the trailer. It gives you a sense of what the book's about.
Page 1. Today we're going to read Unlabel by Marc Ecko. He built a very big, ubiquitous brand. Do you know what a brand is? Do you have one?
You are a brand. You are a brand. You are not a label. Authentic. Not a hashtag, tag, or resume.
It's never what you make, but how you make them feel. I don't care who you know or what your teachers say. Stop acting like data, open for display. Quit counting all your likes, followers, and friends. This is not a game. It's time for us to say.
You are a brand. I guess you're gonna have to buy the book.
Selling out or selling you, you are not a resume. Pleasing you or pleasing them, gatekeepers do not play. You think we bullshit, we think you're just weird. They don't teach this stuff in school, so let school come to you. Run your guts to the skin, define your brand, and win.
Hello, my brand is white, black, Jewish, Catholic, poor, or rich, smart, numb, talented, or dumb.
You see, the world will try to package you and put you on a shelf. So if you're gonna be one, brand it for yourself. The cool guys will roll their eyes, but they're starting from the start. Trust your gut and have no fear, become a work of art. Read the book and do your part, it's time for you to say.
So that was the trailer. Oh, thank you for that. So the spirit of the book is it's a business book for the creative class, and I pose it's intentionally designed to kind of make the reader flat-footed, because so much of the conversations around branding is something that's kind of an exotic or abstract high concept for most folks, as even evidenced by some of those text answers of saying, you're kind of questioning, I don't know, or being kind of unintentionally flip about it. And as a guy who built a brand, and a labeled brand, where I put my name on underwear and sold a water in a glass bottle, with some fragrance, and I played the vanity side of the brand game, and I think I'm uniquely qualified in being able to share some of the trappings of building a brand that's perceived, right? The one you see, right? Versus the inside brand, the guts to the skin brand. And that's kind of how I frame the book. And I challenge the reader that if they like it or not, that they are brand. And especially young folks today, right? We live in an era where our media is totally fractured and disintermediated, and there's the ease of publishing and self-broadcasting through Twitter and Tumblr and all these different distribution devices. But you have to be careful not creating a false positive and getting in the business of just playing towards perception. And we try to set up in the book what qualifies the habits that brands need to take in building great kind of authentic products, services, experiences, and how that can apply on a micro level to us as individuals, and how when you're likely to have 8 to 10 jobs in your career, how that will travel with you, and it could be pertinent in ways that your social media handle, your resume just won't serve. And how to be careful about getting caught up in the vanity or the make pretend of it all, because that could be the unintended consequence. I use the metaphor of anatomy throughout the book, and I love that exhibition of the bodies, because it's one of those things, kind of like the ocean, or things in science that, despite how much academics want to organize it for us, and they can explain it, and they can make it sound really logical, like the anatomy and how the muscle and the sinew and the ligaments work and how blood gets to those muscles. When you peel away the skin, it's our human nature. We just all kind of are repulsed by it. It's kind of like, there's something kind of like magical and repulsive all at the same time. Like you just don't want to look at it. And in some ways, I use that as a metaphor to personal branding, because personal branding sounds so clunky, right? It's like the kind of thing like, I can't imagine you guys going out, any two arbitrarily doing lunch and be like, let's talk about a personal branding. It's such a goopy conversation and kind of saccharine, right? But there are some essential things that come from reconciling these high concepts. So the book, I propose there's 2 types of brands. There's the like I said, guts to the skin, and skin to the world. So really what I try to share is, I think for all of us in our own ways, we're all trying to be actualized in some way. And how actually the framework of branding, despite some saying that it's vulgar and kind of the dirty work of Madison Avenue, the framework actually helps you materially get to a place of what those guts to the skin values are. And the notion of Unlabel is this high concept of refusing to be packaged in which the skin you are shipped, and knowing deeply what's inside there, all the way guts to the skin. So it's a guide, and the formula acts as a template for a kind of a philosophical model. So I'll give you kind of 5 prescriptions as a pharmacy school dropout, 5 things that maybe you could take away. I think if you manage to get through it and read the book, I think these things will have more meaning in the context of my personal story. I don't want to overindulge with those details, because I really don't think it's my personal story that's that unique or interesting. Yeah, there's no doubt that white Jewish kid growing up in Lakewood, New Jersey, into hip hop culture in the 80s in a really ethnically diverse place, created a unique scenario of nurture for me. My environment has shaped my perspective on things. But that aside, I think all of us have those unique anecdotes to share. I think what's unique is maybe hopefully what I've learned from it. So I'm going to share with you 5 prescriptions. So number 1. Prescription 1, be a creator. Okay, that's really broad. What does he mean by that? Be a creator. Who, by a show of hands, fancies themselves an entrepreneur? That's interesting, okay. By a show of hands, an artist. No, but not the artist, kids from the art school. Don't raise your hands, you don't count. Artists. That's interesting. I asked that same question, right, Blossom, to high school kids. And it was total opposite reverse ratio. What the hell happened that you let the artist get beat out of you? What happened in life, in the system, that allowed the artist, this idea of a creator, to get beaten out of you? Like somehow you needed your crayons or your paint to be an artist. If we look at the etymology of these words, right? Entrepreneur, okay? First of all, it's French, okay? So it sucks just for that. Sorry for any Frenchies in the room. It's the root of this word from 1828. French entrepreneur, I can't speak French, but it basically means like to undertake. Okay, so you're an undertaker. You undertake risk. Artist, okay, older world, been around a little bit longer. 1581, Middle French artiste. The root of the word Latin ars, which means to fit or join together, kind of like Legos, right? So I've fancied myself more of an artist, and I've learned that the high concept of being a creator and rallying around that and rallying around kind of the best practices of an artist is a really unique way of problem solving. And you needn't be good at manipulating the plastic arts or sculpture or music to think or behave like an artist, right? And I think there's something in our system that it's almost in our culture that people are ashamed to contemplate that kind of messy side of problem solving, right? The ball of clay is there and you just blah, hit it with your thumb, ding it with your pinky. That's the bridge of a nose. Work it in, there's a little bit of an eye, and that kind of like sense of discovery that comes through creation. So being a creator is a prescription that I would yield to you guys, and to challenge yourselves and what you're doing to think like one. Words like numbers don't suffice. I mean, as evidenced by that dictionary, and as I've said, entrepreneur sucks. I'm not really feeling that word. So try creator for a while. And in a vomitorium of social media, which is really the atmosphere of our media world today, people get a false sense of creation just by talking. And what I try to share in the book and through the lens of the formula, that action is quite different than talking. And to be careful not to get a false sense of success or a false metric for success just by talking or executing against the punch list, okay? Just because you're efficient doesn't mean that you're working like a creator, right? And you got to ask yourself who you're harvesting for, especially young people. They have to be very sensitive to this stuff. And now I'm a huge fan of social media. I use it in my business. Complex is massively dependent on audience development through social media tools. But I think that people need to be conscientious of the value proposition here and who ultimately they're working for, and if in fact it's really helping their brand, and if they're really in touch with the fact that their brand is ultimately defined not by what they're saying, but what they are doing and what they're making. So there's that old app, but I prescribe to a different app. You guys could look this up. It's on the iOS deck. Have you seen this app? Yeah, it's called Discretion. Came out in 1300s. Number 2, prescription. Sell without selling out. Okay, there's one that's okay, what does that mean? Sell without selling out. So much of what I grew up with in the 80s was this high concept of the starving artist, right? This kind of self-loathing, tragic, suffer for your art, Jackson Pollock, drunk and stumble over your shit and, make your stuff and, no, it's not available for sale, screw you, like that. That tendency is kind of the other side of this double-edged, the way that the knife cuts both ways for a creator, right? And culturally, it's a very Western thing to want to starve and suffer for your creations. And we believe that there's this massive holy war between commerce and art, that somehow they're mutually exclusive. One is the work of the divine, Michelangelo, right, and creation, and one is all Don Draper, and it's cynical and it's just about squeezing out the money, right? And I kind of challenge that. I say that contrary to popular opinion, the two aren't mutually exclusive. And there's some best practices that come from being a great artist that lend to being a great entrepreneur, and there's some practices of being a great entrepreneur that you can learn from artists. So they needn't be separate and distinct. And as I said before when I made the joke with that vomitorium slide, it's hyper fragmented out there. If you like it or not, there are practices as an artist or creator, an inventor, or whatever product or service that you're trying to, yield, that brands use to deploy that can in fact serve you, and you have to kind of reconcile that in this day and age. If you like it or not, you are a brand. Suffer. All right? You got to kind of, deal with it. And I tell artists and creators, okay, we can make peace with that. All right, so you're saying, all right, don't be afraid to commercialize. Don't be afraid to go for it, right? And I say, it's like never feel bad about successfully selling your creations. Never feel bad about creating something you can't sell. Because so much the emotional side of business and invention, if it's art or whatever service it is, there's an emotional side that has us afraid of not, maybe satisfying a compliance standard of some sort or being ridiculed, right? So I truly try to challenge the, folks to not be apologetic or begrudge the commercialization of their work, and to acknowledge in an intellectually honest way if they are in fact afraid or not, and if that's what's holding them back. Is it peer review or is some other thing? Which leads to the notion of number 3, which is creating wealth that matters. Okay. Creating wealth that matters. Right? Well, we're rational, right? Our school systems are set up in a sufficiently rational fashion. There's a taxonomy, a hierarchy of who's at the super level, who's at the principal level, and works its way down all the way to the student. It's rational. The students are dependent on our needs to have to learn. There's a certain level of mastery the teacher can exhibit, right? X plus Y equals Z, right? No. Numbers don't lie, but our emotional sense about these numbers definitely affect the pitch and the tone in the room, right? And so much of what we do as a society is based on counting and compliance metrics, right? A plus, my daughter comes home, she said, Dad, look, I got 100. I said, why didn't you get 150, right? Greatness works itself beyond a compliance standard. There is no metric to comply to. And there's this double-sided sword that comes with wealth creation, because it's all about, wealth, collect wealth, right? How much money, grades, wins, follows up. I should have edited this slide. Sorry, I didn't make it safe for work, but you get the hint. Everybody's busy counting. Count, count, count. Stop seeking validation that can only be found in finite numbers. right? Just because you're, our K through 12 system is set up that way, and maybe how you'll get your raise at your job, there's another brand of wealth creation that can't be defined by absolute metrics, right? And this really speaks to that urgency of trying to find, an actualized and aware state, present state of what your personal brand is. And defining those things helps define wealth that matters. You become more tuned in. You're less, you're more appreciative of the things that you earn, the things that you know. And wealth that matters cannot be counted. Number 4, be an unlabel. That's the name of the book, right? The book, I use my story, and I talk about how I built a brand and I sold that brand. And selling that brand and being, quote, divorced from or kind of amputated from that brand in some ways, I use that as a metaphor. That's what it felt like, right? It was like losing a limb. And I realized that there is a meta brand, this notion of unlabeled, that served me well throughout my career, that is really the state of being beyond just this kind of perceived brand, right? Since we're going to organize, and like the Schoolhouse Rock video attempts to do, the world's going to organize us all. We're going to project these labels onto one another. This is what we do, right? We try to find what's in the frozen meat section, and, where the intellectuals go, and where the artsy-fartsy ones go, where the rich ones go, where the poor and the underserved go, where the artists go. We try to do this, and there's some benefit in kind of organizing things, I presume, in the way that, like, I guess, a Walmart superstore does. But if you live up to and you accept those labels as what defines you, you end up just being about the flourish, right? The flourishes, the logo. When I tell to people, like, when they think about their branding and they think about they're so consumed with the flourishes, and like those flourishes that on the outside stuff is it's just a gun without ammo, right? It's what you do and how you're going to make people feel that really matters in the world. And unlabels are, wildly and almost masochistically self-aware of that state, right? Because the worst thing is that if you're not careful, you find yourself acting out these labels, right? All, pleated khakis, and your resume matches everyone else. Or worse yet, in a spastic fit of defiance, you try to be the black sheep, right? And you end up like all the goth kids all together, like a black sheep in a herd of black sheep. So I'm not saying, be so irreverent for the sake of irreverence sake, but be tuned into what your value structures are, guts to the skin, and help that inform how you position yourself in the world and how you project that as the substance to your flourishes, right? Why? Because gatekeepers are out there, right? And these gatekeepers, man, they're no joke. And unlabels seek to defy the boundaries, the perimeters of a gatekeeper. Gatekeepers often have abstract compliance standards, and worse yet, let's be honest with each other, irrelevant compliance standards, okay? And yet, I've seen it in the fashion industry. You know how many really talented people that I know, designers, that built their business for the gatekeepers, and then their business just sucked, right? Like, they did everything to be a darling, and then their business suffered for it, right? So instead of being consumed with the gatekeeper, focus on the goalkeeper. And I talk about that pretty explicitly throughout the book, and certainly that's been a theme in my life, because those third-party external forces that are either going to create a compliance metric or a metric of ridicule that sometimes is self-imposed. Sometimes you put it on yourself because you're afraid of, what are they going to think? You're not going to fit in, right? You're like, sorry, life's not about fitting in, right? It's not always that neat. So when you refuse to be labeled, you play by your own rules. You help set the perimeters for what the compliance metric are, and you kind of seek that goal line beyond the transaction that you're measured by that finite number, be it money or the wins, whatever, that indeed exists in that realm of like a mania or a madness. But at least it's informed by the things that are deep within your values infrastructure, right? And if you're not careful, right, you become overly comfortable. I was talking about this earlier. And I think this is an important, concept here, because institutions needn't be built merely by beautiful buildings or infrastructure. Institutions are often crippled by nostalgia, and the worst kind of nostalgia is the nostalgia we create for ourselves. The worst kind of institutions are the ones inside our own, right here, right? We create them because we're comfortable. We don't want to be uncomfortable. We want tomorrow to be smooth. It's got to be easier. I don't want the friction. There's enough friction in the world, and you put on CNN, right? So the truth is, you can't just blame the gatekeepers for those institutions. You got to challenge yourself. Are you inadvertently creating an institution in your own head, right? Because you're allowing it and tolerating it, inviting it in, because you're overly comfortable. Listen, comfort, I tell people, we were talking this morning, I made a joke about this, about like, people, entrepreneurs will say to me, they're trying to parrot, they'll say, Mark, I'm thinking about getting a nice watch, because I understand if I have like a nice, like a tag here, it'll be like, it's like a self-fulfillment thing, And I say to them, actually, get a nice pillow, get a nice bed, maybe a pillow top bed, because that's the one place that you're allowed to really be comfortable. That's the one place where you nurture all these other things, the stuff that you're going to collect, that you'll have context and perspective for it, right? And in a culture of don't sleep, I tell people, sleep. So, are we celebrating institutions for their pomp and their ceremony, or for their impact and their actions, right? Not just the ones that do amazing work or aim to do amazing work, but also ourselves, are we getting into our own pomp and ceremony? Often we do. I know personally in my life, I've been guilty of that. Authenticity, number 5, prescription. Authenticity is a pursuit, not a destination. So it's kind of similar to the kind of quick counting concept before. But, again, this kind of gory, gruesome Gray's, Henry Gray illustration, what I love about it is that it reflects a deep, deep truth in nature. That if you look here, or if you look out in the woods, I challenge you to try to find a straight line in nature. They don't exist, right? They don't exist. Straight lines are a man-made notion. They help us rationalize and organize things. But yet, why is it that we design our expectations that way? Especially, creative entrepreneurs that, they're so emotional and so passionate about. They caught that Steve Jobs-itis, and they see it. It's right there, right? And they open their eyes, and like the truth is, it's over here. And the way you're going to get there is going to be pretty zigzag, right? So they don't exist. So to presume that it's not about the pursuit, right, is a massive fallacy. And that's why I built the formula. That's why I built it. It was kind of to take the piss out of those kind of classic 80s, 90s management speak books that very prescriptively try to say, here's step 1 through 5. This is what you do, and then you will be successful. Like there's some great lessons to be gleaned from those sorts of products. But what I really try to say, and you could see the theme here, is that things don't just organize in that fashion. And a notion like authenticity for a guy who came up, white kid, into hip hop, who was challenged, like, are you real? You're too black for the white retailers. You're too white for the black retailers, right? It's been a theme my whole life. You're not really fashion. You do streetwear. How can you be in the CFDA? Why would we buy ads in your magazine when it's just going to be a shrine to you? Why would we do that? Why would we build a pay to be in your vanity project? So I've always had to succumb to that, and I've made that's a common theme for me. So this formula of authenticity, where hopefully you'll take the time to go through it, I'll challenge you guys. I challenge you to break the math. I think that the model actually works, where unique voice equals fear, the function of fear minus the function of action divided by the function of self, this notion of how selfish or selfless that you are. So it's unique voice times infinite truth plus the capacity for change, which is a measure of, when you break it down, humility and hubris, the range of emotional impact, all raised to one's imagined factor, right? Very much tied to definitions of future and nostalgia. Not like that fancy Jetsons future that so much of us are taught to aspire towards, flying car future, but like the one that's like 20 minutes from now. That one's okay. So, X plus Y doesn't equal Z. And then, and that formula isn't designed to get us to a finite rubric where I get you, it's a 1.443. No, it's a differential longitudinal calculus, right? And brands really behave across an axis of time and actions. And they're very hyper aware of that. And as individuals, we have to think about those actions. How are we making people feel? What are you doing? What are you making? Not just what you're saying. And know that it will go like this. Just deal with it. You all know it, right? So I tell folks to focus on that authentic pursuit rather than the destination, rather than the finite metric, rather than that fixed, absolute fighting condition, one-of-one scenario. Focus on the authentic pursuit. Guts to the skin, skin to the world, because ultimately it really is just a work in progress. So get cracking. Anyways, I'm at Marc Ecko on Twitter, and you can follow me there, like Moses. Cheers. Thank you.
Okay. We are going to take a little break just so you and your table can talk about what you just heard and see if you can make sense of it amongst yourselves. And then what we're hoping you'll do is write down some questions. There are cue cards. They look something like this, very old school. For those of you online, remember you can send your questions to the Facebook page for Ed Sessions. But write down your questions. We will have roving mics in the audience for those of you who want to stand up and ask Marc a question directly. We'd love to see that. So am I right? Roving microphones are still a game plan of the day? Good. We also are going to have our own question that Marc helped us design. Marc, I'm going to pull up my phone for this one, so bear with me, everybody. But the third question that I'm going to ask has to do with the manifesto that Marc designed, the Artists and Instigators Manifesto, which reads, I'm a brand, I own it. From the guts to the skin, from the skin to the world. And so if you respond to that, you can text to the number 22333, that same number. You're texting your message. Do you want to be a part of the Artist Manifesto? And the answer is the text number that you need to add to the front of your message is 343397. So once again, text your first name if you want to be a part of Marc's manifesto, which is the Artists and Instigators.
Last page of the book, too. You can just mail it to me if you want. It's cool, too. Sorry.
He's making it easy on you, but I'm trying to get him a little more rigid here.
Yeah.
So anyway, text, so your name, if you want to be a part of Marc's manifesto, if you want to join the club, 22333 is the number you're texting to. The number in front of your name is 343397. And it's up on the screen. Thank you very much for backing me up with that. Does that make sense, everybody? Clear as mud? Write down your questions, talk amongst yourselves. We'll come back in a moment.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. I tried to give Mark about 30 seconds to eat his food, so that's probably good enough. Speakers get it rough around here. I got a few questions that were handed to me from folks around the audience who I'm going to start us off with those. We'll let Mark answer some of those. So Mark, when you get a chance, come on up. We'll put you back on the spot.
Yes.
Okay. There are microphones wandering around, so if I don't get your card and you want to ask a question, make sure to raise your hand, make yourself very visible. We'll get the folks by with a microphone so you can embarrass yourself in front of everybody. Mark, some of the questions here, I'm going to start with this one. What are your suggestions for getting past gatekeepers in a world dominated by so many? We can take up the whole rest of our time
Be
with
ready
that
to
one.
get
but
into a
let's-
fight. Be ready for some, it's going to not be pretty. I think if you want to get around them, you first of all, you got to ask yourself, do you really need them and what's the alternative? In some instances, you just do, especially in this educational, our system that, is so, and I hope I don't offend anyone. I don't mean to. I don't know you guys personally. But I definitely have some strong opinions on the monopoly of our curriculum and the kind of outdated modalities of, seat time and kind of the big oil things that are dogging this industry, from the way that the curriculum products are sold in to the way that the rubrics are designed and built, and how everyone's kind of maybe not totally intellectually honest about how that's a for-profit business, contrary to popular opinion. Not that it needn't be, but it's just that what serves that kind of traditional model should be challenged in the same way that new, more out in the open, industrious entrepreneurial models are positioning themselves. They shouldn't be begrudged because they're openly not-for-profit, when in fact these otherwise not-for-profit education testing service is somehow not in the cut with the way that the system monetizes and creates its dependency on the Pearsons, the Scholastics, and these kind of things. So I think you have to be willing to pick a fight. I mean, if you're really going to be honest, and you're going to offend someone. I mean, the greatest of all time, Jesus, right? A lot of people hated him, right? So, I mean, I think that if you're going to take a path, you have to take a path in a way where and I say it in the book, building a personal brand is like building a personal religion. It's slightly, you have to decide what you're willing to live for, what you're willing to die for, who you're willing to, and draw those lines in a way that makes you somewhat of a fundamentalist, because otherwise you're going to be wishy-washy, and you're never going to create the kind of change that's needed that's so desperately needed to make a difference.
Okay, this next question I think goes right off of that. What is the brand of public education in the United States, and what do you think it could or should be?
It's a good question. I think the brand, the brand right now is suffering from a self-image thing. I think that there's a lot of great, and I've seen this within brands and companies before, where as the people go, they're really good people, but they're still trapped by this nostalgia for what kind of shaped the brand last century in a kind of very agrarian society. And right now it still suffers from that kind of apple for the teacher, chalk and chalkboard, seat time, Carnegie unit thing that creates a tension in a world where young people are so stimulated by all of this relevant stuff in the outside world. So there's such disparity between like what they perceive as relevant in school and their curriculum products, and then the stimulation they're getting in the outside world. So that's the challenge right now. And I think what it should be is, because I think the great kind of equalizer or the garlic to that vampire would be, how do you build a brand around entrepreneurship? How do you build, because I'm yet to meet a successful entrepreneur, even though I take the piss out of that word, who's not sufficiently well educated. They might be dropouts, they might not have the fancy degree, they might not, there's something about the way the brain works that they had to have been the sufficiently well educated, independent problem solvers who are very in tune with what they're good at and what they're not good at, right? So if you could create that as kind of the standard, or if somehow you could glean a high concept off of that and kind of reorient schooling around rather than towards the valedictorian, and all right, well, that's a picture of the educated. That's kind of the gold standard at that graduation ceremony. He announced he's going to Princeton or to Cornell or whatever. I think that there's a lot of disparity there between, well, is that the relevant course versus what's really going on the boots on the ground, like out there in the workforce. So I think that there's a tension there.
How are we doing from the audience? Are there folks in the audience who want to have a question for Marc? I have microphones everywhere. Go for it.
Describe the perfect educator for a kid like you.
Perfect educator is the most entertaining person. I think like the best teachers I've ever had have been the most entertaining people. And I think that they might not acknowledge, they might not know that that's a skill set, because there might be like an awkwardness about them or like they're cadent, but there's something that they're able to transact on an emotional level that keeps me riveted because it just entertains me. I mean, I know that maybe sounds a little bit vulgar to frame it that way, because that doesn't sound very rigorous. But that creates an environment where the learning comes through osmosis. It's like the learning is like this passive thing. I just learned some shit. Wow. That was really funny how I learned it. Like when you could kind of break through that, that's when I've seen like education at its most masterful place, is when when an educator can delight you in the same way that like and that's what they're up against, frankly, right? That's what they're up against. I mean, from a psychological point of view, for the user, the consumer of that experience, is being entertained and distracted by all this other stuff. You got to keep up. It's not easy, not trivial.
Who else out there? Who else has a question from the audience? I see one back.
So what are one or two of the biggest lessons that schools and education can take away from your book?
I think that the picture of success is not a one-size-fits-all, right? And I think everybody knows that. As parents, they know that, right? And then on their job, once they're kind of in the field, in the trenches, they the real question is how can the system, and on even a hand-to-hand combat fashion, how can an educator kind of necessarily find that kid that has the intellectual capacity but doesn't necessarily fit in? Because it doesn't mean that person won't necessarily be successful. And in some places, that precociousness or that kind of hard to pin down thing is the very thing that could make that person successful in the real world, right? So, I think it's more of I think there's probably more themes that around assessment, compliance, that you could kind of read through the subtext of the book, if that makes sense.
How are we doing? I see there's some hands in the back. Go ahead.
I definitely listen. When I built the book, I mean, George Lucas was very generous what he said about the book, and I used it in the book. He said he blurbed me. I'm not to be. I'm gonna pat myself on the back on this one. He said, "This is the book he wished he could have bought in high school." And it's funny because I designed it to very much look like a high school kind of biology or like anatomy book, like the visualness of it. And anyways,
Go ahead.
Yes, at our table, we're talking about in education, there's a lot of gatekeepers. I don't mind swimming mulch with alligators in them, but I would like to just go knock on the door and have the gatekeeper give me the key to let me in. So it seems like you've opened a few doors. So instead of going around those doors, how can we get the gatekeeper to come on our side?
Oh, I haven't necessarily gotten the gatekeepers to consent in my business and in my experiences. In fact, I share some scenarios, and examples where explicitly they didn't consent, and I just, said, all right, then I'm going to make another way. I think, honesty is like water. It just finds its way in. And I think, having intellectual, honest conversations and being not to be challenging for the sake of being like some instigator, just in the sense of like, I'm going to go pick a fight because I can. That's not constructive. That has unintended consequences. But having intellectually honest conversations and reminding those gatekeepers of how their product is built and whom it should be ultimately serving. I mean, this is a business, okay? The consumer is the student, and if this was being held by the same standard as the smartphone industry, you guys, the educational system generally, not you guys. I don't mean that in a personal way, because you guys all are fighting the fight every day, but the industry generally would, be like, BlackBerry, right? Like they know they have an inefficient product, and I think there has to be an insurgency amongst the teachers, and I think at the most base level, to create the kind of change that's really needed in the educational system, for better or worse, and that's scary. That's scary for guys that are like front line. Because, I mean, you've got a family, you've got, like, you don't want to piss off the right or wrong person. Like, there's consequences. But I think you have to stand by your values and communicate through the lens of your values. And as long as you're doing that and you're respectful, then you're at least working to create the change in the right path, in the right way. You just got to call shit on people. You do. I mean, like, I want that for me. Like in every business that I have been, I've micromanaged and I've built things where you couldn't tell me anything. I talk about the role of hubris as a toxic component. I asked the kids in school today, and I asked you guys, just kind of a fun exercise. But did anyone see Return of the Jedi? Jabba the Hutt? You remember Jabba the Hutt? Do you remember what killed Jabba the Hutt? Leia? Was it Leia? Anyone else remember? It was what? It was strangled, the chain, right? No, actually Jabba the Hutt killed Jabba the Hutt. His hubris. He created an environment that allowed himself to, okay? That she just did the blocking and tackling. But he was he shut out every single one of his advisors. There was so much hubris and self-pride, and that he suffered the consequences of not listening. It wasn't like his advisors. You watch how the movie unfolds. They were kind of warning him, like, oh, these Jedis are like, you might not want to mess with them. They'll do crazy shit. Right? And I see that as one of the things in all businesses, where people they get high on their own supply of hubris, not just their product or money, but like of their hubris, their pride, and it is toxic.
Couple minutes left. Who else out there?
Why the Echo? Why the rhino?
Why the rhino? I'm not going to answer it. No, kidding. The rhino, actually, I've been in business for over 20 years, but the rhino is probably only about 17 years old. I was at a trade show in the 3rd year of my business, and at the time, I had a word mark as my trademark, so meaning it was, made out of serifs and type. It was like a graffiti script of my name, right, of Ecko Unlimited. And I'm at this trade show, and I noticed that all my peers and everybody in the competitive set is essentially like their logos are kind of the same shit. And so how am I going to create real differentiation here? So this is like one of those instances of like school comes to you, you don't go to school, right? It's not like, I read a book on how to build a logo, right? But I walked the trade show, and just by studying the best practices of other businesses, I was like, oh, look, an alligator. Look, a dude on the back of a horse. What's he doing with that stick? I didn't know from polo. I didn't come from that. The tree, timberland. So it was like a best practices of those nonverbal word marks, right? Those nonverbal marks. And I went back to my parents' house where I painted those first 6 T-shirts that started the business. And my dad, off the garage, had what we called the blue room. And I talk about it in the book. I think my parents conceived me in that room. It had mirrors on the walls, shag blue carpet, nautical theme. It was a nautical bar theme. It never made sense to me because my dad, as a Jewish guy, wasn't really like a fisherman, It's very waspy of him. But anyways, but he had a collection of these sand drift wood rhinos there, right? And I used to play with them as a kid, so I went in there and I just reflected on it. So the honest truth story is it was kind of like one of these stories of, the consumer voted. Because that season I came back with 20 T-shirts in the collection, and one of the 20 was the rhino. And I remember the buy side saying, what the hell is that? We don't need a dinosaur. I'm like, it's not a dinosaur. Okay, listen, we could get the hippopotamus thing from Outdoorsy brands. We don't need that from you, okay? We get that from Timberland. We don't need that rugged outdoor. I'm like, but it's not supposed to be rugged and outdoorsy. Just whoa. So they said no, right? And what I went on to do is I use that metaphor of like, logos are like guns without ammo, because it was the action that I went and I projected meaning onto it. I started to associate and assign meaning onto it by sponsoring the right offense and having the right sticker and stenciling campaign back in the day when like in the 90s when like music marketing, that's what you did. And kind of we assigned all this meaning onto it. So yeah, that's why the rhino is one of those manna from the heaven things. So I worked to assign meaning onto it that was actually a non sequitur from what you intuitively would think. You intuitively would say outdoors, rugged, safari, right? Well, we went and assigned all this other meaning onto it, and in some ways that better served us. And it became that inside joke thing, and slow to deploy, and that, a year later, hey, Mark, you got any more of those hippo shirts? They're selling. It's a rhino. So, yeah. And it's taken on meaning. It took on when I was $16 million in sales, $6 million in debt. That's like functionally bankrupt. I felt I connected to the rhinos as this animal that's kind of prehistoric and kind of somehow sage because it's a herbivore, yet it's fierce. And there's something mythological about it, and there's a persistence about them, obviously, because, they don't like to be backed up. If you ever watch the rhino back up, that's why they're designed with, their eyes this way and their horns this way. So we started to extract meaning off of it that applied to us, and also that kind of like crunchy on the outside, soft in the middle thing that really was embodied us as a company. So it took a lot of meaning.
I hate to do this. We have to wrap this up so we can get you guys on an orderly schedule. But let's all give a hand for Marc. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I I want to thank everyone who asked questions. Mark is not actually going anywhere right away, so if you kind of hustle up to the front, you can corner him. I know some students have done that already, so go fast. But I want to thank also everyone who joined us on the video cast today, and thanks again to all of our partners, the Idaho Technology Council, the Idaho State Board of Education, the Idaho Association of School Administrators, Idaho Businesses for Education, Idaho School Boards Association, the Idaho Charter School Association, and KTVB. Next month, the speaker for the Ed Sessions series is Dr. Mike Feinberg from the KIPP Charter School. So come and join us again. You can join us online if you can't make it to the show itself. Thank you again very much. We'll see you next month.